What is up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 407. We have an exciting show tonight. It's a first-time guest, absolute legend in the sport. He's been running ultras since the early aughts. Luke Nelson is going to be joining us on the show today to chat about his recent Hardrock 100 experience that occurred this last weekend. It was his first time running it. He placed 7th. And
no big deal.
No big deal. From what we saw and what we heard, he approached this race with so much gratitude and so much stoke. And I feel like there's a lot of lessons in how we can tackle these big challenges by learning from Luke. So I'm really excited to have Luke on the show tonight. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live. The show begins now. Ginger Runner. Yay! What is up, everyone? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 407. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy Tuesdays to spend a little bit of it with us. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
How are you?
Doing well.
We have an exciting show tonight. Did you know?
It's always a very exciting show when we have a first-time guest on.
Yeah. This one's, let's be honest, long overdue.
Yes.
Our guest tonight, Luke Nelson, is going to be chatting with us all about the Hardrock 100 that he ran this last weekend, placed 7th. Amazing performance at his first time running Hardrock 100. But he has quite the resume. He has run a number of races. I would say all of them are at that upper echelon of difficulty. He's a true passionate member of this sport and community, doing amazing things for climate change and advocacy and bringing awareness to a lot of these issues. He's also a race director and hosts the Scout Mountain Ultras, which we have heard are some of the best remote backcountry OG style ultras in the business. We just have so much to cover tonight, so we're going to dive right on in. But of course, before we introduce our guest, there is the wonderful Kim. Hi.
Hi everyone. Kim Tashima Newberry here as always. If you're new, say hi in the chat. And of course, we'll be bringing Luke on in just a second. So if you have questions for our wonderful guests, you can ask them in the chat room.
In the chat room. We also like to thank our GR crew at the beginning of every episode. It's because of them that we're able to do these live weekly Ginger Runner Lives now for going on like 8 years or something, 400 plus episodes. We also do a daily live stream. So a huge shout out to our GR crew. If you would like to join, all you got to do is head on over to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. All tiers get access to some really fun perks, discount codes, special live streams, video feeds, all sorts of really fun stuff like that. So consider joining the crew if you have not already. 2 individuals in particular at that top tier we like to shout out at the beginning of every Ginger Runner Live episode. First and foremost, Brian Sands. He's been a longtime supporter, truly inspiring ultra runner. Lost over 100 pounds in his journey to ultra greatness, and he's such a supportive member of not only our community, but so many ultra running and trail running communities. He really does so much for so many in the sport. So we love Brian so much. And Brendan Quarrell, one of our favorite people from the land down under, Australia. Brendan Quarrell is training right now for a number of ultras. The Yu Yang's Ultra Series has a whole bunch of different distances. He's going to run his first 100-miler in 2025. But he is such a great pillar of our community as well. So we love to shout him out at the beginning of every Ginger Runner Live episode as well, because he does hold down the fort in Australia.
And he's also the bringer of kangaroo content.
Always. Anytime we get a chat with him, and he's been a crew member, so he joins us for our live streams and stuff like that during the day, during the week. We get kangaroo content, so we appreciate that. All that being said, join the crew. You know how to do it. It's time to introduce our wonderful guest. This is his first time appearing on Ginger Runner Live, but hopefully not last and long overdue.
We're going to try not to scare him away.
Yeah, hopefully not. But it is my honor to welcome to the show Luke Nelson.
Yay.
How are you, my friend?
Welcome.
I'm great. Happy to be here.
I mean, let's first start with, how are you feeling post Hardrock? Because anytime we've had a guest on post Hardrock, it's usually like, I'm fine, and fine is in quotes. You know, they're usually in shambles. But how are you doing? How's the body?
Better than I expected to be at this point, I guess. I was able to walk downstairs without the handrail today, so that's a good thing.
Are you like, Are you eating all the things? Are you just like consuming as much as possible, or is it still at that phase of like, give me a second?
No, it's there. Basically, voraciously hungry. I ended up going to the well. We can talk about it a little bit more as we break down the race, but ended up a long stretch without calories, and so yeah, I'm working on catching up.
I think it's probably the best place to start, seeing it's your first time on the show. So we don't have a lot of, or at least our viewers don't necessarily have a lot of backstory as to just how badass you truly are. I know how badass you are. Kim knows. You've done some pretty spectacular events, done quite well at many, including the Barkley. You had your fun run this last season, which is, of course, always a nice, wonderful talking point. But I kind of want to go back to a perfect example is Plane 100. Can you give us a bit of backstory as to what draws you, one, to these types of events? Very difficult, kind of remote, really challenging mentally and physically challenges. And what drew you to something like Plane, for example? So let's get some of that context.
Sure. So I like a lot of ultra runners, I came to the sport a little bit non-traditionally. I didn't grow up as a runner necessarily. I didn't run track. I did one season of cross country in high school, but it wasn't my jam. I was way into just being in the mountains, kayaking, rock climbing, snowboarding, those types of things.
Yeah.
And through kind of a series of significant life changes, I had a couple of friends pass away in the mountains kayaking the same year that my now 15-year-old daughter was born, had me kind of checking myself on what was safe in the mountains, and ended up finding running, trail running. And because of that, my draw has always been to mountainous races. That's the place I want to be. I feel like I can be in the mountains running more safely than some other sports that I was pursuing actively. And I also have some pretty badass mentors, Jared Campbell being the kind of ringleader of that, who when your friend that's encouraging you to start doing ultra running is the guy that's, finished Barkley multiple times and dreamt up all of these incredibly challenging mountain challenges and runs, you end up doing these kind of maybe off the main path races, but that are every bit as challenging or maybe more rewarding because of that.
I mean, anytime the name Jared Campbell comes up.
That's what I was going to say. Talk about a great mentor to get you into the sport.
Yeah, it's like, we've had him on the show before. We've chatted with him a bunch, and we were at one of his Barkley finishes, and it was one of those like, this guy's on another level, but so kind and down to earth, and truly like he's so good about making you want to do these hard things. So I can imagine him as a mentor is very much, not that he's coaxing you up to the difficult stuff, but like he's inspiring, right? And it's amazing to kind of see that rub off, because I look at you, Luke, and I've been following your career for a long time now, even though this is really the first time that we've got a chance to chat. But I look at what you do and the events that you choose with a sense of awe. Like, it's one thing to go run a 50K on your local mountain. It's another thing to go run Plane or Barkley or something that just inspires a different level. Yeah. So yeah, let's talk a bit about Plane, because that in itself is sort of an interesting event. You won it last year. That's why I kind of want to talk about it. It's not just you ran Plane 100, it's that you won it. Give us the context. What is this event, and how does it manifest itself, and what drew you to it?
Well, I mean, full transparency, the biggest reason I was drawn to it is I needed a Hardrock qualifier again.
Yeah.
And as I was looking through the list of races that I was interested in doing, I had hoped to get a qualifier at Barkley, and only got a fun run, so had to look for something else. And some of the other events were already sold out. Plane had some spaces, and Plane, it's so awesome because I would consider it kind of a varsity level ultra. It's a 100-miler. It's in Plane, Washington, and everybody's like, Plane, Washington, exactly. Where is that? Not something that's like the big glorious mountains. The other really cool thing about it is you have to be really self-sufficient. There's no course marking. There is no crew. There are no pacers. There's one aid station. And it's about halfway through the race, a little less than halfway. The course is a big figure eight. So you do one big loop, you come back to where you started, you have an aid station and your vehicle, so you can crew yourself with things, and then you go out and do the rest of it.
Yeah.
And so that extra challenge of taking away some of the safety nets or the guardrails that we sometimes use in races was super intriguing to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I ended up with Plain.
I feel like Plain is just on a different level.
Graduate level.
Yeah. I
like
mean, you said varsity type ultra, and
best way to put it. Because it requires so many of our skill sets. It's not just let's run far. It's not hand
holding throughout the race.
In fact,
no, you're all alone.
Yeah.
You're not even allowed to bring hands to hold. What's amazing is this being a Hardrock qualifier this was your ticket, right? Like, so this is actually what ended up being your ticket into Hardrock 100. How long have you been trying to get into Hardrock?
I first applied in 2010.
12 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we've chatted about this on the show. We had Dylan on last week talking about his last year, his experience at Hardrock and the challenges it takes. It doesn't matter how great you are, right? How many races you win, that doesn't always play a part here because it is a lottery system. 12 years is amazing. What is your connection to this race? Because that's definitely a theme that I want to touch on here, is not only the dream to run it, the community that's there, but what is it that draws you to a race like Hardrock?
There's so many things. My first 100 miler was in 2009. It was the Bear. It was the first year after I started running.
Wow.
And right after running the Bear, Jared was like, you need to start applying to Hardrock. And I think he was on maybe 6 or 7 finishes at that point. And his encouragement was, it's the community that you've been looking for. And I think it was 2011, I paced Matt Hart to a great finish that took us a long time. And I got to see it firsthand and experience this community of people that are there for each other 100%. All the volunteers, all the crew are there to support runners doing this really, really hard thing. And it felt like a family. And for so many years, I really wanted to be part of that, but I kind of stood adjacent because I'd paced multiple times, I'd crewed multiple times, I'd volunteered, but I didn't get a chance to do my lap.
Right. Yeah, that's common discussion around it is you pace, you crew, you volunteer, you do all this community interaction, and you do become kind of members of this family. This is again what we've heard is it becomes part of your being and sort of a part of your draw every year, where, okay, Hardrock's coming up, I'm going to be a part of it this year, even though you're not in the race, right? Like, it's always going to be on your calendar regardless. And we see kind of the same thing around states and stuff like that happen every year. But it's what I love is that this last year was your first time running your loop yourself. When you found out that you had gotten into Hardrock, what was that experience like for you?
I was just pulling into my house after a long run to get back for the lottery. And I was a little bit late. My long run had gone a little long. And I pulled into the driveway. I turned off my car. I opened my phone. And it was exploding. And even now, I'm getting teary thinking about it. Like, I just wept for joy for this opportunity to be able to go be part of this community and do this really beautiful, hard thing. And I mean, I was sat in the car for probably 20 minutes before I collected myself enough to get out. And then I called Jared.
I mean, I'm imagining him also being quite excited for you because he's been along for this journey too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And just so many other close friends, mentors, competitors, the community, just so excited to support me in it. And right then I made a commitment that I made it in a social media post, maybe that later that day or the next day, where I made a commitment to all of those who hadn't gotten in. Because I feel it, I feel what it's like to not get into the lottery, and that I committed to them that I would do the best that I could, that I would train the best that I could, and I would carry their spirit through, recognizing that a lot of people don't get that chance, at least not at first. So I held to that. I held myself to that for the last 9 months. And I thought about that whole community during the run as well.
Oh,
beautiful.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think that, part of what makes Hardrock extra special, I haven't run it myself. You haven't run it either, but folks like you have been trying to get in for 12 years, 10 years, and then you finally get in. It's almost like that extra motivation and extra inspiration just to keep you going through all the hard training, because you know what it's like to sit there year after year after year after year of not getting in.
Yeah. To tribute your run to those who are still going through that process is such a generous way of looking at it. But also I absolutely understand. I applied in 2016 when I had my qualifier, and it was, of course, I'm like, it's a long shot. It's never going to happen. And it didn't. But it's one of those where you, like, your post of, hey, I'm running this for those who are still trying. And that's what's like, I felt that connection to you while you're running, even though I haven't seen the course with my own eyes. I knew that Luke was running it for those of us who want to someday have that dream, but haven't. There's something special about that, Luke. And there's been so much discussion in the last few weeks about the lottery and how it works and how to get in and all that kind of stuff, that why I'm so glad that you joined us on the show today is because I want to highlight just your passion, your individual, unique connection to the run, to making your loop around that course for yourself, but for so many of other people who have been trying to get in for so long. What I would love to touch on too is how you chose your crew, because you are very seasoned. You have a lot of amazing partners in your corner who would love to be there for Luke Nelson. How did you choose who was going to be there pacing you, especially from someone who's been on that side so many times?
There were a couple of people who had a first rider refusal. That was Mike Foote and Ty Draney. I paced Ty in 2000 and either 13 or 14, and I paced Mike in 2017. For me, the pacing experience that I had with both of those runners are probably in my top 5 of best running performances of my life.
Wow.
And people are like, well, that wasn't your running performance, right? But I got a front row seat of seeing both of my friends have their best race at Hardrock. Ty broke 30 hours. Mike came second to Killian. And we were, step for step with Killian for, I don't know, 15 miles out of Telluride, and to be there and support Mike in that, and to see him dig to a level that is just beyond what I could consider even capable. And same with Ty. Ty had a bad stomach for a while, and to watch him, we burned the barn down and went all the way to the ground and kept going. And so those guys were the first two. I offered them pacing spots right away. And then the third pacer, because the way the logistics work, it made sense to do 3, was Cody Lind, who I've had the wonderful opportunity to pace at Western States the last 2 years. And again, amazing performance. Cody dang near dropped me at Western this year. Had we gone another mile, I would have blown out the back. And so that he needed the opportunity to whip me back as I was whipping him.
Did you give him the last section, right? Or no, did Foot brought you
Cody
in?
was first.
Yeah, Cody was
Mike
first.
was second, and then Ty was last.
Oh, got it.
And part of that was I needed Cody to help keep me metered. I wanted to go long over handies with Mike. And then Ty needed that last 10 miles because that was the 10 miles I paced him.
Perfect. I mean, talk about a corner. Like, talk about having kind of a who's who kind of tucked into your corner, just ready to let the lion out. This year particularly, clearly was an all-star cast of who's who, both on the men and women's side. Courtney DeWalter, Darcy PQ. We've got Killian. We've got Francois. We've got Dakota. We've got these just amazing athletes. Do you take that into consideration when you get your shot at Hardrock? Are you thinking, I'm just so fucking glad to be here at Hardrock, or do you go, I'm at Hardrock with Killian and Francois and Dakota and Courtney, and like, what goes through your head?
All the things with that. I mean, so grateful to be there. So grateful to have the opportunity. Would have loved to have been able to race it 10 years ago when the field wasn't as deep and maybe stand a little closer to the top of the podium.
Yeah, totally.
And it was preposterously deep this year. I mean, so many great runners. The people you listed, and then another 20 people on the men's and the women's side that could be contenders in any race anywhere in the world. It's just so deep. And for me, I was so grateful to be there with a field like that, because it keeps it honest, right? If it's going to be a race, let's race with people who know how to race. So I was grateful for that. And when do you get to run with your heroes?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so many people that I admire so much, Killian and Dakota, Courtney. I mean, she dropped me real fast when she caught me. I'll be honest. I was hoping for a little bit more time with Courtney.
More joke time, right?
She dropped me real fast. But when do you get to do that with the people that you admire the most in the sport that you love? It's so unique about ultra running that they're doing the same thing we're doing, and we get to do it with them.
You get to toe a line, right? Like you get to stand in Silverton with the who's who, with the names, with all that, and you're there on equal footing. Like you're also a part of the same experience. Like that's
yes,
man, that's got to be super special.
Absolutely.
For you, being your first loop around, I'm an emotional guy. I'm an emotional runner. Like I have no shame in that. And I'm curious if for you standing at the start line versus being there for crew or spectating or volunteering and picking up later, was that an emotional experience for you to kind of be standing there? Like when did it start to hit you?
Oh, I mean, I probably started crying at about 4:30 in the morning.
Like coffee, just
on the edge of being so grateful. And, I walked into the gym and I checked in and I came across Billy Simpson, and I came across just so many other people that had been waiting for a long time to get in, who were also feeling that same just overwhelming joy to be there with my pack on, with my watch charged, ready to go. And I get pretty emotional too. I wear them on my sleeve, generally put a few miles behind me, and I'm just, you got it all.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had tears in my eyes up until and past the start, and then had moments over and over during the race. I caught up with Jeff Browning maybe 3 or 4 miles in. He'd gotten a little ahead, and Jeff and I have been close friends for a really long time. One of those mentors. He is often referred to as a big brother, and to spend 10 miles running with Jeff, I was running behind him as we crested over off the top of KT, and I teared up just thinking about how awesome that is.
Yeah.
Just to be there with the best people.
You could at any moment look ahead or look behind and be familiar with the person, right? Be familiar with
Absolutely.
the name and like their resume and who they are and what they've accomplished. And that's a special thing. It's a special day, special race, special place. For us as spectators, we're watching this kind of unfold in real time as much as we can through tweets, essentially.
Yeah. Some Instagram stories.
A couple Instagram stories, depending on signal. But we're seeing reports of Luke Nelson coming through these aid stations with nothing but a big grin on his face and gratitude and just joy. While we're seeing competition play out, you're still in the front. I'm not saying you're not in the front. You're in the mix, but we're seeing like Killian and Francois and Dakota kind of have their go at each other and kind of seeing this all play out. But we see the reports that Luke is coming in just super positive, just stoked to be here. Where did that come from, and was it intentional, and how did that play out in those early miles? Because it's such a cool thing to read about.
Very, very intentional. I've raced a lot of races in my career, and it was the first one that I set my A goal of the race was to be grateful. And that was it. My second goal was to finish because I needed to get out of the never lottery, right? Like that was, but those were the goals that I set for the race. There were no more goals.
Wow.
That was it. And I wanted to be grateful and carry joy through the whole day. And I picked up when I saw, I'm pretty sure it was Billy in the gym in the morning, and he said, "Well, how you feeling?" I said, "It's the best day ever." And it stayed that way all day. You know, I had low patches, I had tough spots, but every time somebody, "How's it going?" It's the best day ever, because it's the day that I was living, and I was on the Hardrock course, supported by my family and my friends. Like, how could you not be grateful for that?
Man, I like it's distilled down to its simplest form. It seems so simple, and yet it is to like look at something as the best day ever, the best moment ever, and how I think I don't know. I'm catching myself not doing that. You know, like there are days where I go out and I'm having a tough day in the mountains, or I'm having a tough day mentally or whatever,
Or
and
you're thinking about the other 100 things that are going wrong in the world.
exactly,
You know,
rather than
be in the
just
present.
be in the fucking present. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that, Luke. What an amazing gift that is, not just for yourself, but what you were able to give to other people, because I think it's super insightful.
It rippled to us and we weren't even there.
Yep.
You know,
We are live.
For me too, just to kind of add to that,
Sure.
It ended up being one of my best races ever because of that too. I think in the past, had I got to where I was puking my guts out on the top of the handy, I would have spiraled into a pity party.
Yeah.
And instead, I wiped the puke off my beard and smiled at Mike and said, "Isn't this the best day ever?" and and I could giggle about it and be like, "This is absurd, but it's still awesome."
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard, but it's still going to be that best day. And it allowed me to not get into that negative self-talk and that pity party that can really be detrimental to racing. I was like, "Well, here we go. That's what we're dealt. Let's just keep on going and loving every step of this."
You have done so many difficult things, so many races and events, and you've probably found yourself in some pretty dark caverns of despair. I can only imagine. We all,
Yes.
even in like simple races, I I find myself in tiny little caverns. But to know that you, with this experience and approaching something like Hardrock, which is very, very difficult, top tier, expert level, are still using this as like a what if gratitude, or what if just being super excited about the day, maybe that's my solution. And to find out that it worked for you is such a pure, simple idea that I think a lot of people can plug in. Just plug in right
Absolutely.
away. We are live with Luke Nelson. We have tons of live questions. Kim's pulled some aside here. Let's get to some of those before we start talking about what it took to finish.
Just a couple quick comments from the chat. Matt in the chat says, "Luke, when I grow up, I want to be like you and have your attitude. Love it." And Bridget earlier says, "I love that. Gratitude is amazing." Our first question comes from Nathaniel. Nathaniel asked, "Luke, since you've been seeking to enter Hardrock for many years, was the event what you expected? If so, in what ways?"
Yes, absolutely what I expected. It wasn't foreign to me because of the time that I'd spent around it in the community, but the race itself was every bit as hard as I'd hoped that it would be. The community was every bit as loving as I'd hoped it would be. The full experience was just top of the world, just best. And I think that the time waiting, I'm grateful for the time I had to prepare. I think about the me when I first started applying compared to the me now, the runner that I am now. It wouldn't have been the same in so many ways, but I'm grateful that I had the time to get ready. And it may seem strange, like that someone would be like, "Well, why would you be grateful to have to wait so long?" But it made it feel worth more because it didn't come right away, and it allowed me to work on the craft and practice this craft of running in the mountains to the point where I was comfortable enough to set a goal like I can be grateful, and that's the goal, and it's okay to be that. That acceptance was pretty important.
I love that you said that, because I think so often we've talked about this before on the show, being immediately gratified. Like, okay, I want to get into this race. I got in next year. I'm going to run it, and I run it.
Like instant gratification.
Kind of that instant gratification, and that just goes, that goes well beyond ultra in this day and age with technology and everything like that. But the idea that you applied 12 years ago and have spent the last 12 years, yes, there's a lot of work to get to the start line as far as training, racing, picking the right race in the right year, and
running qualifiers,
making sure you get into the lottery and having the lottery work out in your favor. There's a lot of different hurdles to get over. But the fact that it took you 12 years, and you just sort of said it right there, as that's part of the journey, and that sort of helps savor that moment even more, but also the maturity that allows you to have a goal of just being gracious and to finish it. Like, those are your goals versus, oh, I plan on doing it in this amount of time and getting up this, with the splits. It's such an interesting perspective, man. I truly, truly appreciate it. It makes me want to just like rethink everything on like my approach to how these things affect me, or how I get disappointed because I didn't get into a certain thing or whatever. This is the best show ever. Thank you, Luke.
Best show ever on the best day ever. This is the best day ever.
Best day ever.
But I'm like legit, like totally into this, Luke. I really appreciate this
And honestly,
conversation.
I'm pacing at 100 this weekend, and I'm just going to say that over and over. If times get dark, I'm like, yeah, but this is the best day ever.
Hell yeah, it's gonna totally work.
Yeah.
You're pacing Cascade Crest this weekend.
Yeah.
Have you run Cascade Crest?
Awesome. I haven't, no. That's one of the few in the Mountain West that's still on my list.
It's a qualifier. Come on up.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead. Let's get to a live question and then I'll dig in.
Yeah. So just in regards to the gratitude and your positive outlook, Bridget in the chat asked, how did you learn to adopt this approach?
I'm still learning how to. I've always felt grateful for the ability to move in the mountains, because not everyone can. Not everyone has access to the mountains. Not everyone has a body that gives them that gift. But it's something that I'm continually working on. And I think that intention around that helps it grow and helps gain better perspective of how lucky we really are. So it's a process.
Sweet. I want to kind of talk about, you mentioned your stomach kind of going south, and you mentioned sort of the last bit of this race. And we saw it on social media. You would come into an aid station and, bless Brian and I Run Far, and sort of like, Luke maybe not looking quite as good as he was before, but stoke level still high. So what's going through your head, and how do you dig yourself out of those holes? Because I imagine at Hardrock, with this approach of gratitude and this approach of just being thankful to be there and getting to the finish line, it's hard to get yourself out of those holes. But how did you do it? Like, how did you manage to just keep pushing forward?
Maybe first how I got into that hole. I made a mistake coming out of Telluride, which is mile 27. I took 2 flasks. It was 81 degrees in Telluride. I didn't expect it to be that hot.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that hot.
It was hot, yeah. And I ran out of water going up to Kroger's. So I was dry for about an hour. And at Kroger's this year, they were a little bit less, the aid station was a little bit less supplied than it had been in the past. And so I took what I thought that I needed. It still wasn't quite enough. So I got behind. I was able to move okay from Kroger's down to Ouray, which is 43 miles. But then leaving Ouray again, it was super hot. It was in the 80s again. It was super humid. And again, I ran out of water. I had my pacer then. I was able to dip in a creek that was maybe a little suspect. But that's when my stomach started to get a little, I'll know soon, right?
Yeah.
But that's when my stomach started to get a little bit weird. Okay. And I think it was the result of not hydrating well enough. When we got up to Engineer Aid Station, it's pretty high up there. My stomach just wasn't happy. We sat there for a few minutes. The weather was also coming in. It started to get pretty emotional weather-wise. So we sat at the aid station. I had some broth. Licked some salt out of my hand because they had a salt shaker, but they didn't have a salt tab. So I just poured some in my hand and licked the salt, and it's great. And came around a little bit, and then we had this real big kind of a emotional surge because we got into a little bit of lightning and hail as we went over Engineer, like a lot of the lead runners did. We got to the next aid station with Animus. I picked up Mike Foot there, and that's when you go up Handies. And seemed seemingly things were going okay till just before the Summit of Handies. I went to take a gel, one of my favorite flavors of gel. As soon as it touched my lips, I puked to my nucleus. I mean,
wow.
Everything came out. I'd never had that experience in an ultra before. I'd gotten a little nauseous, but I'd never puked. And it was violent. And I mentioned the moment already. I was like, well, here we go. Best day ever. But it was a little tenuous. I had a hard time getting calories in for the rest of the race after that. When we got to Burroughs, we caught John Kelly, who was having a similar experience. I told him this in person, so I feel like, okay, to share it. He looked terrible. We've seen
John.
Yeah, we've seen John at his worst. Yeah.
Yeah, he looked bad.
Yeah.
I've seen him on video looking bad, but never in person looking that bad. And I got a little bit in race mode, and I was like, well, he looks real bad. I feel bad, but I don't look as bad, so I'm gonna get a little bit of food and get out of here. And basically the way it worked from there is I could do a few calories between aid stations, get a little bit of real food in, and then progressively that became less and less as the race went on.
Got it.
And the way that I worked through it is I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. I could have probably moved faster had I been able to put in more calories. Mike was my pacer at the time, and he was pushing me as best he could. But when I would spend, 45 minutes with chew cheeked, just kind of sucking on a chew, that's not a lot of calories getting in, but that's what we made do with.
It sounds like Adam Campbell. We had Adam on the show after he ran it, and I remember him saying that he survived the last 70 miles with ginger chews in his cheek. Like that was it, right? And you're going, how does that even translate?
Little, like hamster cheeks.
Yeah, and that's how I get through it.
I'm eating.
I've done that. I can't imagine how many hours that's how I've gotten through life. I do. So you referenced the moment of not having enough water, basically drying up for periods of time early in the race. Is that a hindsight observation, or is that a real-time observation?
It was in real time. I knew I was in trouble.
So this is great, because I think runners who are watching or listening to this will find themselves in a situation very similar, whether they run out of water or their calories are off, or they are able to identify a moment when things are off. How do you mentally stay in the game, and two, right the ship? Because you managed to do both, even though clearly 25 miles later you yacked and had, a rough patch, probably putting it lightly. But how can you stay in the game?
It really helps when Courtney Dauwalter's chasing you down.
That's all. That's all it takes.
Get Courtney behind you, and you're gonna keep moving. I just, it would have been easy, like I said, to just fall into a pity party and be like, oh, I screwed up, and this is now going to suck, and it's going to be the worst day ever. But that wasn't what I was going to have. I was resolute in enjoying that experience, even though I didn't do it perfectly. There are always things we could do better. And while I was kind of trudging up towards Kroger's, thinking about the situation I'd gotten myself in, I was still just grateful to be there, and knew that if I did spend a little bit of time, that I could maybe bring it back. I was a little more optimistic early on. The optimism faded as we went on throughout the rest of the race. But from experience, you can put yourself back together. Sometimes it's not perfectly. It's if you think I think of Humpty Dumpty kind of mispuzzled. But it's good enough. It's good enough to get you through and to keep you moving. And you just do what you can.
A little duct tape and bubble gun never hurts.
Yeah.
To kind of put the pieces back together. I want to chat a bit about the last few moments for you, last miles, because clearly I can imagine this is probably one of the best moments for you in life. I mean, being able to wrap up a 12-year journey, so to speak. Are you getting caught up in the race of it? Is that even a part of the equation? Or is it just the knowledge that the rock is ahead of you and that's it? What is it like for Luke Nelson?
I would say the last 10 miles were some of the most special. One, because the the potential doubt of not being able to finish is gone.
Mm.
You make it. And I certainly did think about competition a little at that point. I knew that Nick Curry was making moves. He was coming. So that lit a little bit of a fire. I also was looking at the clock, thinking, wow, it would be really great to be under 30 hours. But most, I was just excited to see my family back at the Rock.
Yeah.
Celebrate that with them.
Because they've been on this journey with you.
Yeah. I took a picture the first time we went to Silverton with my kids. I have my young daughter on my side holding my hand, and our second daughter is in my arms. Our oldest daughter is driving now. She's 15.
Wow.
Our youngest child wasn't even born when we started this. And they've been along the whole way. They crew me at races. They see me training. They support me in this crazy journey that we're on. A lot of it was for them. It's good for them to see their parents do really hard things. They see the sacrifices that we make as a family. They make sacrifices for me to do this. And I owe it to them to do the best that I can.
When you got to the Rock, what did it mean? I mean, I know that your family's there. They're seeing this. To you personally, inside, what did getting the chance to touch the Rock mean for you?
So much. It's proof that I could do it, which may sound strange, right? With all that I've done, you'd think maybe I wouldn't have a doubt, but I guess imposter syndrome is real. There's validation within the sport community that I could do this thing and I could hold my own, and to prove to myself that I could carry that gratitude throughout too, and just be so damn grateful for all of it, for the race, for the community that created that and continues to perpetuate that incredible challenge, and their embracing of me as part of that is, I don't have words to explain it. I don't know that there are words to explain it.
Man, we without a doubt appreciate you, and I am so glad that we got to meet, because even though it's virtually, I feel this weird kinship. Like I'm relating to everything you're saying. I've only experienced one 100-mile finish in my running career, but it's one of those moments that meant more to me because of the long journey that it took to get there than any other race finish that I have. And I realize that it's not on the same level here. I'm not making a direct comparison, but what I am saying is I'm relating to what you're saying, and I hope that people listening and watching can relate, because it's not Luke Nelson, this incredible elite athlete who, finishes 7th place at Hardrock. It's an ultra runner who got the chance of a lifetime, who's been working their ass off to get there, enjoying the experience because it is the experience. And we're so grateful for your story, Luke. I have been messaging multiple people that were at Hardrock, and all of them said, Luke is the man. Like, it's gonna be so awesome that you have him on the show tonight. He's such a special guy, very, very kind. Your stoke and your gratitude were contagious out there throughout the day. So whether you know that those waves exist or those echoes and ripples exist that you created, they do, and you did it. And that's a wonderful thing. So your race finish to you is very personal, very special to you and your family, but it actually echoes through the community, and we really appreciate that, Luke. Wonderful, wonderful job.
Thank you.
We are getting towards the end of our show, but I do not want to pass up the opportunity to ask Luke a bit about Scout Mountain Ultras, which is his races. And Eric kind of has a good, maybe parallel question, and maybe I'll kind of adapt it to this.
Sure.
But Eric asked in regards to what is the closest 100-mile experience to Hardrock for Luke prior to Hardrock. I'm going to take that a step further and go, how does Scout Mountain Ultras sort of have similarities, and what drew you to make these races and make them as difficult and challenging, but inspiring and rewarding as possible?
Yeah. So Scout Mountain initially started as a Jared Campbell creation. He created the Pocatello 50, which is in the town that we live in. He didn't live here, but he had a close friend that did. After a couple of years of him as race director, I took over. And as I looked at it, I always dreamt of having a 100-miler because we have a beautiful 100-mile route that needed to be run.
Cool.
It's hard. There's no qualms about that. It's pretty remote. There's a lot of single track. There's a lot of climbing. There's some wildlife. It's all the things that we seek for in an ultra experience in the mountains. And so I couldn't help but creating that as part of the Scout Mountain experience. We also try really hard to make it a way that people can progress. So we have 21 miles, we have 50 miles, and we have 100 miles. So as you are on that journey of exploring your boundaries of what you can do as a human, you can grow until you get the opportunity to kind of hit that pinnacle distance that we offer. And I'm really lucky to be able to train on those trails literally out of my back door. I can be on the Scout Mountain course within 3 miles or 4 miles of trail from my house.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Talk about a backyard.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. And we also try really hard to have that sense of community as well. You know, we had these early examples of these great races that everyone is celebrated. Every runner is as equally important as the other. Our emphasis is on the experience and not as much on the competition. So we celebrate. We have prizes for the mid pack. We have prizes for the end of the pack. We greet every runner as they're the winner, because they are. For all of us to get to the finish line, it's dang hard. It's a lot of commitment, and we like to celebrate that with people.
Hell yeah. I mean, it sounds like a great time. And where can people go to register?
ScoutMountainUltras.com. It's the first weekend of June every year.
Man, sounds like perfect opportunity to train on beautiful terrain in a beautiful part of our country, and to have a race director like Luke Nelson at the finish line waiting for you. I mean, do you give out hugs, high fives, or pizza?
Hugs.
Hugs
To everybody that take them. If they want a
yeah.
high five, that's fine, but I'm offering hugs.
Our guest tonight has been Luke Nelson. We are so thankful that he joined us on tonight's episode. Man, a lot of life lessons in tonight's episode. I'm really excited.
Such a great episode.
Listen.
I feel like I just have like a little tear in my eye still from the whole episode.
I mean,
we are both very emotional runners.
Without a doubt.
And I like,
no shame.
I feel the connection to you talking about, you know, being teary during the morning and at the start line. And yeah.
Every moment's a bit of an emotional moment. And again, we'll be pacing and crewing at Cascade Crest this weekend, and that we have a very close connection to with that race. It's obviously local, but it was my first 100, is your first 100, and we have friends that run it every year, and you're going to be out there pacing. So I've imagined there's going to be a lot of stories to tell while you're pacing and stuff. You can use tonight's episode as an example. Luke, before we move into our after show for our GR crew, because it is your first time on the show, we have a segment for first-time guests called the Quickie Question Quiz. It is very easy. It is a rapid-fire series of very simple questions.
Yes.
Like, that's clearly an overstatement. They're very simple. You just answer with the first thing that comes to your brain. When you are ready, give me a thumbs up, and we'll just rip on through. Here we go. What was your very first race?
Manan Butte Challenge.
Where's that?
It's in Idaho. I think it's called the Spitfire Ultras now, but it's a small trail race.
Sweet. Favorite place to run currently?
The Tetons.
Road or trails?
Trails.
Bucket list race?
Hardrock.
Yeah. Favorite running movie?
I don't know. I don't watch running movies.
That's okay. Do you have a guilty pleasure TV show?
Star Wars, Clone Wars cartoon series.
Okay.
Dynamite choice, actually. Dynamite choice. I'm, again, feeling the wavelength connection there. Favorite pre-race meal?
Hamburger and sweet potato fries.
Favorite post-race meal?
Anything I can find.
And finally, what are your current running kicks? Or what did you run Hardrock in?
La Sportiva Bushidos for most of the race.
Excellent. I have a pair over on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats. You passed. You did it.
You did it.
Well done. Our guest tonight has been the wonderful Luke Nelson. A reminder that if you'd like to run any of his races, the Scout Mountain Ultras, go to scoutmountainultras.com. It is a race series that takes place in early June. Registration open now, or when does it open? Do we know?
This year it's going to open in October.
Okay, sweet. Luke, any last words before we move into the after show?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
100%, man. We are honored. That is going to wrap up episode 407 with the wonderful Luke Nelson talking to us about Hardrock 100. We're going to move right into our after show. If you would like to join our after show, all you got to do is head on over to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. All tiers get access to it, and all previous after shows and all future ones as well. Kim, do we have a GR Crew member of the week?
Of course we
yes.
do.
At the end of every episode, we'd like to recognize members of the community who go above and beyond, do amazing things out there. We call it our GR Crew member of the week. Kim, who is this week's GR Crew member?
So much went down this weekend that I actually have multiple GR crew members of the week. First GR crew member of the week is Ariel. Ariel ran the Y East Howell 100K and was paced by another GR crew member, Elizabeth. And I also want to give a shout out to Scout, who crushed the Vermont 100K as well.
Yes.
And one additional shout out to Michael, who ran the Y East Howell 50K.
Congratulations to those three members of the crew for going above and beyond and doing awesome things this weekend. We're in the height of summer, so there's going to be like
a lot going
tons
down.
of events and big challenges happening. So thanks all very much for tuning into tonight's episode. We're moving right into the after show with Luke Nelson. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Get out there, train hard, race harder, be part of the hardest. I know I am. See you guys next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.